Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with us. Today, we're looking at something that really caught my eye.
Oh, I see what you did there.
I couldn't resist a little vision pun to kick things off.
Always a good way to start.
But seriously though, today's topic is fascinating. We're going to be talking about how our color vision might be linked to myopia and the eye's incredible ability to correct its own focus.
It's a really complex area of research, but this particular article we're diving into really digs deep into something called cone opponency.
Cone opponency.
Yeah, and how it could hold the key to understanding both myopia development and emmetropization, which is that self-correction system you're talking about.
Okay, before we get too far into the sciencey stuff, can we back up for a sec? I think a quick color vision 101 might be helpful for some of our listeners.
Absolutely. So we all know our eyes have these special cells called cones that help us see color, right?
Right. Three types: L cones, M cones, and S cones.
Exactly. Each one is most sensitive to a different range of wavelengths of light. So like L cones love those long wavelengths like reds and oranges. M cones are all about the medium wavelengths like yellows and greens, and S cones. Well, they're the blue and violet specialists.
Okay, so it's like a little color detection team, each with its own specialty.
I like that analogy, but it's not just about each cone shouting out its color to the brain. It's way more sophisticated than that.
Oh, I bet. Our brains are amazing at processing information.
They really are. So in this case, the brain actually compares and contrasts the signals from the different cone types.
So it's not a solo performance, it's more like a duet or a trio.
Exactly. And that process, that comparing and contrasting, is called cone opponency. And it's the foundation of how we perceive color.
So instead of just seeing red or green, our brain is saying, okay, how much red am I getting from the L cones? How much green from the M cones? And what does that combo look like to me?
You got it. And there are actually two main pathways in this cone opponency system. The first is the red-green pathway, or the LM pathway, as we call it. It compares signals from those L and M cones.
Makes sense. And the second pathway?
That's the yellow-blue pathway, or the SL plus M pathway. This one's a bit more complex. It compares signals from the S cones to the combined signals of the L and M cones.
Well, our brains are doing some serious color calculations all the time. But I'm still wondering, what does all this have to do with myopia and the eye's self-correction system?
That's the question this research is trying to answer. The traditional thinking is that cone opponency is mainly about color perception. But this article proposes it might play a much bigger role influencing how our eyes focus and even how they grow and develop.
Wait, so you're saying that how we see color could be connected to whether we develop nearsightedness?
That's the hypothesis. And it's based on some interesting findings. But to really understand it, we need to talk about accommodation.
Accommodation, right.
Yep.
That's the eye's ability to adjust its focus to see things clearly at different distances.
Exactly, like switching from reading a book to looking at something far away.
Yeah, our eyes are constantly adjusting to keep things in focus. It's amazing.
And the main cue that triggers accommodation is something called defocus blur. Basically, when something is closer or farther away than where our eyes are currently focused, it appears blurry on our retina.
So the blur is like a signal to the brain saying, hey, refocus.
Exactly. But how does the eye know which way to adjust? That's where things get really interesting.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, there's this natural phenomenon called longitudinal chromatic aberration, or LCA. It means that different wavelengths of light actually focus at slightly different points behind the lens.
Hold on, so you're telling me different colors of light don't all focus in the same spot?
That's right. Because of LCA, objects can actually appear to have a subtle color fringe around them, especially when they're out of focus.
So like a tiny rainbow halo.
Well, not quite that dramatic. But our brains are incredibly sensitive to those subtle color differences.
Huh. So our brains are using these color cues from LCA to fine-tune our focus.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting. This article suggests that those same color cues might also be involved in emmetropization, the eye's self-correction system.
Okay, so we're talking about how the eye grows and develops to achieve clear vision, right?
Right. And in myopia, that process goes wrong. The eye grows too long, and that causes distant objects to appear blurry.
So myopia is like emmetropization gone wrong. But how does LCA fit into all of this?
Well, that's what this research is all about. They're proposing that the chromatic cues created by LCA might not only help with accommodation, but they could also influence whether the eye grows to the correct length or becomes myopic.
So it's like the color cues are giving the eye feedback on how to grow.
Yeah.
But if it's misinterpreting those cues, it could end up on the wrong track and develop myopia.
Precisely. And to test this idea, the researchers did some really cool experiments. They wanted to see how manipulating those chromatic cues would affect the accommodative response in both people with normal vision and those with myopia.
Okay, so they're playing with color to see how the eye reacts. I'm hooked. Tell me about these experiments. What do they actually do?
So in one experiment, they used this technique called chromostereopsis. It's a way to manipulate the perceived depth of objects based on their color.
Okay, so they're messing with our depth perception
Yeah.
using color.
Yeah, basically they created images where red objects appeared either slightly in front of or behind blue objects, even though they were actually at the same distance.
So they're tricking the eye into thinking the colors are at different depths.
Exactly. And the cool part is that by creating this artificial depth perception, they could measure how the eye's accommodation changed.
So they're looking at how the eye focuses in response to these color tricks.
Right. And what they found was that people with normal vision adjusted their focus predictably based on that perceived depth of the colored objects.
Makes sense. They saw the red object closer or farther away, and their eyes adjusted accordingly.
But here's the thing. People with myopia, they showed a different pattern of accommodation.
Oh, so their eyes weren't reacting to the color cues in the same way.
Exactly, suggesting that their eyes weren't interpreting those chromatic cues the same way as people with normal vision.
So that kind of supports the idea that these color cues could be playing a role in myopia development.
That's what the researchers believe. They think this altered processing of chromatic cues could actually contribute to the eye growing too long.
Because the eye uses those cues as feedback for growth.
Right, right. It's constantly getting feedback from the environment, and those color cues are part of that feedback loop.
But if it's misinterpreting those cues, it could lead to abnormal growth.
Exactly. And this is where the article's focus on peripheral defocus lenses comes in.
Oh, right. Those special lenses designed to slow myopia progression.
Yeah, they create a specific pattern of blur in the peripheral vision.
Hmm.
And the article asks, are we giving the eye the right kind of chromatic information with these lenses?
So maybe it's not just about the blur itself, but also about the color information that comes with it.
Exactly. Most of these lenses use multiple lenslets to create that blur. You know, those tiny segments of lenses with different powers?
Right. I've seen those.
But the article argues that we need to pay more attention to the interplay of LCA cone opponency and how all of that changes with accommodation when designing these lenses.
So we need to really understand how those colors and focus are working together.
Right. They're suggesting that by fine-tuning the chromatic cues in the peripheral retina, we might be able to make myopia control even more effective.
It's like we're trying to speak the eye's language using color and focus to guide its growth.
That's a great way to put it. But of course, the question is, how do we measure these chromatic cues? How do we know what we're actually delivering to the eye?
Right. Good point. We can't just guess at the colors.
Well, there are some really cool techniques for measuring this. One is called wavefront aberrometry. It's like taking a super detailed fingerprint of the eye's optical imperfections, including LCA.
So we can see exactly how the colors are being affected.
And by comparing these fingerprints before and after wearing peripheral defocus lenses, we can see how the lenses are changing the chromatic cues.
So we can see the lens's chromatic impact. But how do we know what the ideal color fingerprint is for myopia control?
That's the big question. And it's where more research is definitely needed. But by studying how these cues change during accommodation in both people with and without myopia, we can start to look for patterns.
So we're searching for those color combinations that tell the eye, hey, stop growing.
Exactly. It's like building a chromatic database for myopia control.
This is fascinating stuff. But let's bring it back down to earth for a minute. What does all of this research mean for someone who's worried about myopia, whether for themselves or their kids?
Well, I think the key takeaways are early detection lifestyle changes and staying informed about new treatments.
So early detection meaning catching myopia as early as possible.
Yes, absolutely. The earlier we can intervene, the better the chances of slowing its progression.
And lifestyle changes, you mean like spending more time outdoors?
Exactly. There's a lot of evidence that spending time outside can help protect against myopia. So encourage kids to get outside and play.
Sunshine and fresh air, nature's myopia control.
And the third takeaway is to stay informed about the latest advancements in myopia control, like those personalized peripheral defocus lenses we talked about.
So talk to your eye doctor about the latest options.
Exactly. By being proactive and informed, we can all play a role in shaping a brighter future for vision.
I love that. A future where myopia isn't such a big concern. This has been a really eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I have a much better understanding of how color vision and myopia are connected.
Me too. It's amazing how something as simple as color can have such a big impact on our eye health.
Speaking of impact, this article really dives into some complex concepts. Is there anything that stood out to you as particularly important for our listeners to grasp?
For me, it's the idea that we need to move beyond this one-size-fits-all approach to myopia control.
Yeah, I totally agree. We're all unique, and our eyes are no exception.
Exactly. It's about embracing personalized myopia management, recognizing that each person's eyes respond differently to different things.
It's like some people do great on a vegan diet while others need more protein. Different strokes for different folks.
That's a great analogy. And just like we can personalize nutrition plans to improve our health, we can personalize myopia control to optimize vision.
I'm really fascinated by this idea of personalized peripheral defocus lenses. How would that actually work?
Well, imagine if we could create lenses that are specifically designed to match an individual's unique chromatic aberration profile and their cone opponency characteristics.
Whoa. So like custom-tailored lenses for your eyes.
Exactly. By fine-tuning those color cues in the peripheral retina, we could make myopia control even more effective for each person.
That's incredible. It's like moving from mass-produced vision correction to a world of bespoke eye care.
And that's a future I'm excited about. We're already seeing some really cool research in this area, looking at different lens designs and materials to optimize those chromatic hues.
It's amazing to think about the possibilities. But personalized lenses sound pretty high-tech. What about people who might not have access to that kind of technology?
That's a great point, and it's why we need to remember the importance of a multi-pronged approach to myopia control. Even with all these exciting advancements, we can't forget the basics.
So things like making sure kids get enough time outdoors, taking breaks from screens, and just living a healthy lifestyle.
Exactly. Those lifestyle factors are so important for protecting our eyes and keeping them healthy.
It's like building a solid foundation for good eye health, no matter what your genes might say. Wow, this deep dive has been incredible. I feel like I've learned so much about how our eyes work and how color vision is linked to myopia.
I've really enjoyed exploring this topic with you. It's a great reminder that there's always more to discover about the human body, and that even the things we take for granted, like color, can have such a profound impact on our health.
So to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of cone opponency and myopia. We hope you've gained a new appreciation for the complexity of your vision and that you feel empowered to take an active role in protecting your eye health.
And remember, the conversation doesn't have to end here. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep your eyes open to the beauty and wonder of the world around you.